Hey Simon, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Jerry? How is it going? How was your weekend?
Not too bad. Can't complain. How about yours?
Not, yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Had to get the kids ready for school and everything. This morning, then went to the
All
gym
right, yeah. The
quickly.
winter break is ending for them, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I got two
They
two
must be bummed
boys,
out.
two boys. They keep me really busy.
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember. Hated going back to school after the break.
Right?
Yeah.
So, so before I don't know if you got a chance to read my email at all this morning, and it was really early in the morning and stuff. But before we get into anything, just quickly, Lofty man, it's really been really helpful to me, just as
Oh,
a customer, as a user of the platform. Um, I am extremely fascinated at what you created and what you built in this marketplace that you established. My father was in real estate, still is, and I just have that in my blood and my bone. I got my first property in 2009, and so I really want to make sure our conversation, our interview, could be extremely valuable to others,
mhm.
and also for you, and for myself. And I want people to understand about the opportunities that they have with Lofty and how
Mhm.
we can go ahead, and at least be that voice to share an amazing marketplace that you've established on the blockchain right now that's creating consistent transactions so far. And I think that's something to really be proud of. And I just want to say kudos to you. So
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for the feedback. If you have any more, feel free to reach out whenever you want. We love hearing from our customers.
awesome, awesome. So I have a set of questions here. We're gonna go through them. I have about 15. I probably won't go through all of them. These are questions from current real estate investors,
Hmm.
current realtors that are maybe a little bit hesitant
Yeah.
about blockchain technology, right? So our job is going to be that gateway for new investors or old investors or anyone that's a little bit concerned about, wait a minute, hold on, I understand real estate, I understand property ownership. What the heck is blockchain technology? What is this public ledger? And why should I even trust it? So that's kind of like what the questions really are around of, or just to kind of give a heads up.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
the first one, all right, so the first one is, what is the process for tokenizing real estate on the blockchain?
Yeah, great question. And the process is fairly straightforward, and pretty much everyone does it the same way. There are only two viable paths to tokenizing real estate assets. And the first one is basically going down to the deed level, right, of the underlying property. So I'm sure lots of folks might be familiar with, I believe it's called tenant in common, right, where you record multiple people's names on a deed. And essentially, they can be any percentages. So you could say, Bob owns 10%, and then, John owns the remaining 80%, right? You can record people's names and their percentage ownership like that on the deed. So that is one option where you essentially create tokens on a blockchain of your choice to then represent that ownership. So you can, legally tie a contract to say, here's the tenant in common deed. Um, this set of tokens represent the entire ownership of the deed. And if Bob owns 20%, he's issued 20% of the tokens. John is issued 80% of the tokens. So that records their ownership on chain. The problem with that is it's a lot less flexible, and the tokens really are sort of a gesture, if you will, because whenever a transaction happens, right, when John sells some portion of his tokens to someone else, say, I don't want to own 80% anymore, I want to get out completely, and someone else comes in and buys that, you know, on paper, or at least on the blockchain, the transaction goes through,
Mm-hmm.
but you have one more intermediate step, which is the government. You have to actually go down to the county office and re-record the deed and basically change the ownership. Otherwise, legally speaking, John still owns 80% of the underlying property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is not a very flexible method, unfortunately. And on top of that, there is also, certain hurdles with this method because tenant in common deeds give you certain rights. So even if you own 20%, you have the right to use the property however you want. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say you just want to move in, you live there. That's a little unfair to the person who paid 80% of the house, especially if your original agreement was to rent it out for income together, right?
Yeah.
But someone legally speaking, if they were actually recorded as a tenant in common on the deed, could just move in, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So there's also the risks there. So that's the first method, and most people or most companies don't do that for the you know disadvantages I've listed.
Okay.
The other method is basically a more flexible method, which is you have the underlying deed,
Mm-hmm.
and an entity will acquire it. So traditionally, this happens in real estate all the time. It could be a LLC, right? You see investors do this all the time, but it could be an LLC. We at Lofty use these entities, or our users use these entities called DAO LLCs. So might sound a little confusing, but they're essentially exactly like an LLC, same legal ownership structure, same rights. The only difference is for these DAO LLCs, there's no manager or general partner. Basically, everyone is a limited partner in this entity, right?
So I
And you
guess
collectively
essentially you can
do.
say that the blockchain becomes the manager
Yeah,
for people.
essentially. So it's not so much the blockchain becomes a manager. It's like every member is the manager. If there's only one member, you are the manager.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 10 members, however, all 10 members are the manager, right?
Okay.
And the way you do it is you manage it collectively through the blockchain, through this governance program, through voting, which is, everyone knows how voting works. It's a fairly democratic process. And one token equals one vote, right? So if you own 10% of the house, you are entitled to 10% of its votes, right? So that's how our entities work. And the way the tokenization process happens is essentially at closing, this part of the transaction is exactly like how traditional single family real estate transactions work. So for people that are in the industry but are confused or don't really understand blockchain, if
Mm-hmm.
you ever deal with this process, nothing actually changes for you. So from a realtor's perspective, if you're selling the underlying house and the deed has to change, then the only difference is here, instead of selling it maybe to an individual
Mm-hmm.
or to a single member LLC, you are selling the house to a multi-member DAO LLC. That's it. You
I
don't really
see.
need to understand the governance program. You don't really need to understand who the owners are and how they're voting. You just know that legally there's this entity. They have enough money. They're going to buy this house from your client. And you still get to make your agent fees. Everything closes through a traditional title escrow process, right? And then the deed gets re-recorded. So once the deed is actually re-recorded to be held by the entity, the DAO,
Mm-hmm.
this is kind of where the tokenization comes in. Now, legally speaking, this DAO as a business or an entity doesn't actually have an operating business. It's not selling a product, it's not manufacturing anything. It does nothing but hold the underlying real estate and managing it, right? And so by proxy, if you own 10% of this company, you own 10% of the property because the fair market value of the company is just the only asset it ever owns, which is the house, right? So
Okay.
that's by proxy how the tokenization process works. So pretty straightforward. You have the underlying house, the deed, then you have an entity on top of that,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have people who own the entity, and they own these entities through the tokens. So that's where the tokenization comes in, and that creates a lot of flexibility in that now when you make secondary transactions, you have one partner saying, hey, thanks for having me in this group. It's been a fun 5 years, but I'm selling my interest to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And they do this transaction. You don't need to re-record the deed because it's still owned by the underlying
By the
entity.
underlying entity.
Exactly. And the
Okay.
blockchain records the ownership of the company to say, like, hey, now, person X has sold 10% to person Y. And that public ledger is what keeps all of that transparent. So if someone comes in, your other partners, like, prove it to me you actually sold it. It's like, here you
Yes.
go. That's a transaction. And that it is pretty powerful in that it's publicly available, right? It's not some transaction in a private database. So anyone can search it up, and it's basically immune for hacking, which is one of the technological benefits of blockchain. In that you can trust that transaction that you see publicly. You know that it hasn't been altered in any
Altered.
way because currently it isn't technologically possible for it to be altered, right?
That
So
and that's
that's
part where a lot of people are gonna have seems that I don't want to say issue, but maybe it's more of a confidence thing about trusting technology, trusting this
yeah.
public ledger, trusting these transactions. And so one of the other questions, we're gonna try to, we're gonna go through here. So you mentioned something about security. And so, what kind of security measures are in place to protect the tokenized real estate assets?
Yeah, so essentially, you hold these, so you don't need to trust a third party like Lofty, or anyone else for that matter. So this isn't like Coinbase where your ownership in the real estate tokens live in a commingled wallets with other people's real estate tokens. And
Mm-hmm.
if the company gets hacked, you lose all of your real estate tokens. In our case, on Lofty, you actually self custody these tokens. So you have your own wallet and you're holding it together, almost like cash. Like if you hold money in your hands, it's yours and it's in your hands. No one can virtually take it away from you. So it kind of works in that same sense. What is beneficial about this process is that realistically speaking, even if you were hacked, you don't actually lose anything because you can easily prove that it wasn't you and
Mm-hmm.
that this was in fact hacked. You can come to us and basically show us the data and figure that out. And if that's the case, right, the the DAO or the entity is the one that created the tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the tokens themselves are not cryptocurrencies. They don't have any intrinsic underlying value. They're basically like your receipt, as an owner in the company. Like, hey, if you own
Ah.
10% of tokens, this is just a receipt to say you own 10% of the company, legally speaking, right? So if you were hacked and it was proven that, you didn't authorize the transaction or you were scammed or whatever's the case, you can just go to the rest of your partners through the governance program and say, hey guys, unfortunately I lost all my tokens. Here's the evidence. Can you guys reissue new tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what will happen is everyone will basically send back their tokens to a what's called a burn wallet, which is it's the tokens are locked in there. It can never be released again.
Mm-hmm.
And then they will just issue the same number of tokens, and then because the blockchain has records at every single point in time of all past transactions, you can basically, it's almost like a backup, backing up your data on your laptop. You can just go back to the date before the guy was hacked and say, what are all the wallets and how many tokens did each person own? And you reissue these tokens to the same exact number for each person. So this way, even when you're hacked, there's a way around it to, basically recover
To
your, your,
recover.
your principal back.
I like that. I like how you said that. Because when I worked for and I was working on the Helium blockchain, that was really similar to what they were doing, with hardware mining and their proof of coverage. So I liked how you explained that. That the asset itself is just a representation. The token is just a representation of your percentage ownership of the DAO itself. So,
Mm-hmm.
people shouldn't be concerned about losing these tokens if they have full. I mean, obviously, we want people to have ownership and
Mm-hmm.
financial responsibility when it comes around that. But worst case scenario,
Yeah.
there is a system in place to protect the users of the platforms and all the members of the DAO there. So
Yeah, definitely. But we would
great.
still advise people to really be careful and do your best to, ensure your assets are held securely, and don't fall for phishing scams and things like that. Because, there is a way to recover it based on
Mm-hmm.
what I said. But at the same time, you can imagine, if this happens to you constantly, like every month it happens to you once, and you keep going back to your fellow partners like, hey guys, can you reissue tokens again? Eventually, people might get pretty fed up with you, right?
Yeah.
So you want to avoid that scenario.
Great, great. So we're gonna move into a little bit of a different question on this one. This one is more about the market demand. So they're asking, what is the current market demand for tokenized real estate, and what is the future outlook for this market? And how you can share your experience, and then maybe a little bit more about your projections with Lofty, with yourself, and other people coming into this space if you're seeing an increase in volume of more people looking into tokenizing their portfolios.
Definitely. So that's a good question. I can't speak to the rest of the industry because I don't have the data on other people's businesses, but I can say for Lofty, since we launched in May of 2021, we've our platform has handled $34 million worth of transactions to date, and that number is fast growing as well. And so really, I think the sky is the limit here, right? The way I always kind of give the analogy to people is that, look, traditionally, most people don't buy real estate, don't invest in it by themselves. Most people have partners. They work with groups of investors to pool their money, right? Because unfortunately, real estate is just that expensive.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to have a large portfolio, you just can't get around the fact you need a lot of money to get started. And so for most people, they don't have those funds, and so they partner up and work with other people. So this sort of process has existed for decades here in the United States. Like every year, there's millions of transactions that occur in single family rental properties all around the country, and the majority of them are done by groups of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you really look at the data, um, the transactional volume is in the trillions annually. So not billions, trillions of dollars that people are doing this. So that's how large the market already is. But if you think about it, it's inefficient because the reason most of these people have to be close friends, colleagues, or family members is, again, goes back to the trust, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very manual, paperwork intensive thing that requires a lot of trust, right? So if you need someone, you're creating a LLC together, and they own 50%, you own 50%. You need to know who that person is traditionally. They need to come in, sign the documents. You guys need to go start a bank account together. You need to figure out who's going to manage the bank account. Do I trust this person? I
Mm-hmm.
put my money in there. What if they just take and run off, right? So there's all these ifs and sort of scary aspects and risks. So what we've done at Lofty is essentially taken that same process that people are already used to, which is, hey, I need to partner up with other people to buy real estate, right? So that's what you do on Lofty. But you get to do it because of the technology with random people on the internet that you don't know, and technologically speaking, they can't scam you, right? And your interests are aligned. You get to make decisions with them together without ever being on a phone call. You don't need to know who the other person is, right? You can trust that your money is deposited in the bank and that person can't touch it, right? Because it's all algorithmically controlled, so that it's their bank account too. They can pull money out, but it's programmed so that they can only pull out the percentage of money that they actually legally own,
Yeah.
right? So they can't touch your money, they can touch their own money, even though it's in the same bank account. So there's all these benefits, and by not knowing these people, you guys are signing documents together and doing all this stuff virtually through the blockchain as well. So that's really the advantage, and that's the difference we're making. And so our belief and thesis at Lofty is that essentially this is the same thing that people have always done.
Mm-hmm.
We've just made it 10 times more efficient and better. So as a result of that, what is the actual sort of end state and market cap for this type of business, tokenized real estate? We believe that it's the same as the existing market cap, which is, if it's trillions annually, then at some point it should be trillions annually for tokenized real estate as well, because it's essentially, at least the way we do it, is essentially the same thing, right? And what is beneficial is that not only is it already a large market, but it's a large market that can grow. Because again, traditionally, people had no choice but to be partners with their friends and family and colleagues and people they trust. But
Mm-hmm.
with this technology breakthrough, you can trust random people, which means that, you know, a lot of people finding the right partners traditionally was hard, right? What if you come from a family and none of your family members have money? You can't partner with
It's
them.
can't
What
partner
if your
with
friends don't
anybody.
have money, right? What
Yeah.
if your colleagues are scared and don't want to invest in real estate? There's all these barriers and frictions, but when you come together on Lofty, every other person here has the money that they're willing to commit and is interested in investing in real estate. So it kind of just filters out all the other what ifs and these other things. And so what that means is, over time, you will actually get more people to jump into the market because they
Mm.
didn't have the environment, they didn't have the network, but now they do, and they don't have to worry about that themselves. And so not only is it going to be trillions of dollars annually, it's actually going to grow.
So
Exactly
what?
how much
So
it's going to grow, we don't know.
so from everything that you just described, what comes to me is like this is a solution to a confidence issue for a lot of people too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because of those uncertainties, because of all those boundaries and obstacles, people are reluctant to make a decision, and they reluctant to make an investment on themselves. I remember when I first got my first token, and I spent my $50, and I was just like, all right, let me just see if this, what's going on here. I understood the entire concept, and and I just slowly kept growing. Now I'm at 23 properties on Lofty, and I'm just seeing my returns increasing, but it really gave a true opportunity for someone that's interested in real estate that may have no clue about it. I mean, you share all of the documents on each house, on each property. You share all of the numbers. You share when something goes down and you need to send out a project manager. You guys are extremely transparent on that. And that makes it, just when you have that data and you can share it with the public, it really just sets Lofty into a place where you're right. I mean, real estate is the slowest of the asset classes. I can maybe say, maybe not the one all the way slowest, but it's one of the slowest, right? And it hasn't had an upgrade or an enhancements probably since like who knows when. And so this will allow the industry to elevate itself, and really create that secondary marketplace of transactions where you're like, all right, well, you know what? I don't have $5,000 or $10,000 right now, but I know I want to do that to invest in a property. Let me go ahead and build that up slowly, on Lofty, and then maybe I can go ahead and then pull out and then make a bigger transaction or go after a bigger property that you guys have.
100%.
So, I really like that. So another question that comes up here, and this one's a little bit interesting. Let's pull. It says, how does the ownership of tokenized real estate asset work, and what are the transfer procedures? And you can just go quickly into that. I have Lofty up.
Yes.
Didn't realize that. So these are the properties that I currently own, 23 of them. Sometimes I'm not gonna lie, like I'll just go get one token just so I can increase this number on a property, and then other times, I'll just go back and add more tokens to some of my current assets. And just so everyone knows, this is live data. This is my information, and you can see, just the property values just going up, and it really just fluctuates with the market, in real life. And one cool thing that I like about Lofty that has helped me in choosing, which asset do I want to invest in is, right here. Here we go. So, you know, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. The market category here. You guys go into and explain, what an area. I have no idea about Cleveland. I've never been to Cleveland, right? So it's just like, how am I supposed to feel comfortable investing in an area I never lived in or I never studied? So maybe can you give me just an explanation here about how you guys decided what information you're going to share on this section and how it can help future investors when they're purchasing their tokens and making transfers?
Yeah, so we share everything because that legally is how it works, right? So this is designed like Lofty is not the manager. We don't own any shares or any part of any of these entities. We don't own any of the properties we're selling, right? You're not buying the properties from us. And you're not hiring us to be your property managers, right? We are just a technology platform. What we do is to ensure that we provide data to you guys that belongs to you. So if a realtor comes with a listing and they submit data, we verify that the data, how many bedrooms the house has, etc., is accurate, right? Or as accurate as we can confirm to be, and so you guys feel comfortable with the data that's shared on the platform. Same thing when you were pointing to the properties showing appreciation. We're not the ones projecting that. There is a third-party appraiser, which you guys pay for, that come
Yes.
in and they give you the reports. We just upload it and keep it there for you so that it's easy for you to access. Again, everything we do is basically about transmitting information and storing it in a way that's accessible for you guys. So you're like, why are, your process so transparent? The documents are out there. Well, of course they have to be. Imagine if you were to go out and buy your own house and you requested, inspection reports and appraisal reports and all sorts of information. That data would obviously be accessible to you. You would have control of that. You would have records of it, right? And so that's what we do. It's all uploaded here for you because that's essentially what you're doing, right? The only difference is you're just doing it all virtually through a platform. So all the data is hosted on this platform. You can download it and self-host it if you want, but it's just in the cloud there for you to easily access if you want to. So going back to the information for each of the market, you'll notice that again we don't provide it. It either comes from Zillow, it comes from basically news about the market. Our platform is just going out and pulling data from a variety of sources and listing it there for you. And we're constantly, the only work we do to improve our product is we're constantly pulling in new data that might be relevant for real estate. So in the future, we'll have something like crime rates, a crime map. Like we're just adding in continuously more data, so you guys can do your own diligence and be comfortable that you have the information on hand, right? So
I
that's
liked
that's
where you
sort of
went
the
there.
difference between us and other platforms. You're not investing in a fund that we manage for you. So that's the difference there.
That is important. I'm glad you went into that. I'm glad you explained that process, so people can get a really good understanding. One thing, I wasn't gonna get into this question right away, but you said it first, so here it is. One thing, at least my father, he's really great agent and an investor. Learned a lot from him, and then I was like, all right, if I can kind of turn my dad into blockchain, and then I figured it out. I can talk to a lot of people. So,
Yeah.
and the one thing, of course, was just like immediately, who are the appraisers? He was asking. How do we figure out the market value and of the properties? What are they doing? That was the first question that he said to me about that. So can you kind of just quickly go into that process of how you guys are figuring out the fair market value of the property? How are you choosing appraisers or anything like that to figure out? All right, now I have a property. How much am I going to list it for on the marketplace? Because when we go to the marketplace here, we see all of these different assets. You can see the location here on the left. You can select different markets. You have your different property types, single family, multifamily, mixed use. I mean, you really, guys, you go super detailed for your client base, for the community here. And so, I know we'll see 474 tokens or 458 or 536. And then, like this one has got 26,000. How are you guys figuring out those fair market values and listing them on the marketplace?
Yeah, great question. So again, it's just a plug-in on the technology side to pull in data. We're not actually figuring out anything per se other than using industry standard formulas, right? So to give you an example, you have the data and we also have the data. Let's say we know how much a property's tenant is paying in rent, right? And we know how much the property was originally purchased for, right? So these are all publicly accessible data. So traditionally, you would use this data yourself to calculate things like the cap rate or your cash on cash return or something like that. We've just done it automatically for you, through the platform, so you don't have to do that manual calculation. You can just to make sure our math is correct, but essentially it's done automatically for you to make it more convenient and easy, right? And also to make it more digestible for, as you mentioned, folks who never invested in real estate before, right? It's already there for you. In terms of who is doing the appraising and how are they hired, same thing. Like the answer to pretty much how anything is done, it goes back to you guys. You're the owners, right? So we're just sort of a marketplace and a platform. So on Zillow, for example, you can often see they're like ads, but essentially they're for agents, right? To advertise their service. There are lenders that are advertising through Zillow as well, right? So you can think of our platform as the same way, but we don't make any ad revenue from these third-party partners. But anyone can come and they can come to us and say, look, I'm an appraiser in this market that you guys currently list properties in. I would like to offer my services. here's how much they cost, right? And it's fairly transparent. And in some markets, only one, we're still fairly new, so only one service provider has reached out, so they
Mm-hmm.
become sort of the default option, right? They're the ones providing all the reports. But when there's more than one, when you guys go to initially purchase a property as a group, you actually get to vote again using your dollars essentially and your votes in the DAO to say, I want to go with this appraiser, I want to go with that appraiser, I want to use this property management company, and etc. and do all of that. So right now, the appraisers, if you go into the documents, it will list their company's name. So again, all the reports are provided for you. So it'll list at the top who did the appraisal, what company are they with, right? And all the cost breakdowns are like very transparent. How much did this report cost? And that is split up amongst all the owners, right? So let's say the report was, $300, but there were 300 members in that DAO, then essentially each of you only pay $1 for that report. So you
Mm.
collectively sort of share the cost of everything. So that's how all of that works, right? And that's where all the data comes in. Same thing with the fair market value. There's a third-party service right now called House Canary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which again, if you guys don't like, you can vote them out and use another service that you prefer. But they come in, they're a very technology-driven company. They provide you the reports. People seem to really like them. That's why they've stayed on. And they're the ones calculating the fair market value and
Okay.
how it changes over time. So unlike a traditional property, imagine in this case, you're getting a monthly appraisal, like just over time. And you already paid for all that service. So that gives you a more updated information than out on the open market of how much your house or your investment is worth. And that's what essentially how the FMV, the fair market value, is derived. And then on the secondary market, when you go to sell, um, it's a free market, capitalism. You can price it whatever you want. You can sell each token for $5,000 if you want to. Nobody's likely to buy it, but it's your ownership. You have the right to list it for that price, right? You can also sell it for you can sell each tokens for $1. You would take a huge loss, and so I don't really understand why people would want to do that, but you could, and if you did do that, pretty much like someone will instantly buy your
Mm-hmm.
tokens because it's just such a good deal. It's like buying a house at a 90% discount, right? Like, a lot of people would be willing to do that. And so that's essentially how all of this works. We're just, again, aggregating information, presenting it to you, calculating data, but all the rates we're using, all the formulas for cash on cash returns and cap rates, these are all industry standard formulas that are available. Anyone can Google them. All the data that's being used, the rent per month, all of that information is available not just to users on Lofty, but publicly to anyone, just someone browsing the site even. Again, because all the reports are provided. So essentially, you can come down to the same conclusion, get the same data, or you can save some time and just see the ones we provided. So that's how all that information access works.
I like this. So I went and went to one of my properties here, and I clicked on the sell. So if someone was interested in, selling one of their tokens or part of their, I really do like this feature here. I just noticed that where you have the House Canary, and then they're giving you a recommendation price of what you should look at to list your token for. Obviously everyone has the ability to sell at whatever rate they feel
Yeah.
they choose to. But if you didn't know, this is the information here, this price history and order book. And it explains the current open orders and transactions. You can see here someone's got some for 36 over here, and then we have someone 72 tokens listing it for 51.98. And all of these different transactions. So this marketplace here, it is open and available for anybody. But so we really helped out the new investor, the new individual that's looking to establish a portfolio. But what about the real estate industry? We have a lot of entrepreneurs, we have a lot of agents. Maybe they're a little bit concerned, maybe they're a little bit nervous about this technology and how it's going to affect their industry. What is the role of the real estate industry in tokenization of real estate on the blockchain, and how are they, how could they adapt to this new technology. Do you have any ideas or any tips that you can offer to current agents of how they can utilize this tech to potentially generate maybe a new revenue stream or a new client base, or just maybe an entirely new system into where they look at real estate?
Absolutely. The way I think about it is basically, I think real estate professionals should always embrace new technology. I don't think they need to worry about, their jobs ever being at risk because, it's a service-based industry. So if you're providing value to your clients, then they will always use you regardless of the technology that exists, right? And if people simply shift to a different technology and no longer use you, it's probably because you weren't providing that much value to them in the first place, right? So at a high level, right off the bat, I don't think anything is going to come out to replace agents or working professionals in that field. So as a result of that, if you adopt new technology to help your clients sell properties faster, right, then you're going to be more seen as more valuable relative to other agents in the field in the area. Your clients will like you more. So
Yeah.
to give you a concrete result, because our platform is online with so many eyeballs on it, there are buyers who are international and overseas, right? When was the last time, if you were doing trophy properties in Miami or Beverly Hills, yeah, you might have that kind of eyeballs and that kind of clientele. But if you're a new agent and you're starting up in like Memphis or like Cleveland, right? What is your network like? How many eyeballs can you get on your client's listing, right? And if you don't sell their property quickly enough or you don't sell it at all, then that's going to be a ding on your reputation. So to give you a concrete example, some of these properties, even though they're in Cleveland and they're in areas that are not super famous or popular here in the United States, but they have people from Italy interested in investing there, etc. Right? So that's what our platform brings in. So some of these properties, this is an extreme scenario, definitely doesn't happen to every single property. So that's my disclaimer here. But one of the properties was sold in 8 seconds,
I,
all
s-
cash.
I've been
So
tracking
if you
that.
were an agent and you just got your first deal, and then the next day you went back to your client like I sold it already at the exact asking price you wanted, you can sort of start imagining what that does for your reputation. And if that client has a portfolio with multiple properties, you can bet that he or she is going to be interested in using your services again. But that's an example of why something like this could be beneficial for agents. We don't cut anybody out, right? So just like
Mm.
right now, it's legally and possible for a for sale by owner listing, right, where the owner doesn't retain an agent. They can do that. So people could theoretically come on Lofty and just sell the house themselves if they're their owner,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the same time, many of these properties have come to our platform because the owner doesn't know about Lofty, but the agent did some research and figured out, hey, there's this marketplace. So in addition to listing it on the
Oh.
MLS and doing this is just another avenue to list a property, get more eyeballs on it, and maybe even sell it in 8 seconds, right? Which is significantly better than what you would see listing it traditionally through the MLS. Same thing on the buyer side. There's lots of investor groups that retain agents to source deals for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the group doesn't do anything. The agent brings deals to them. So same thing. They could come on Lofty and be like, wow, there's 100 something properties already for sale. Not all of them are going to fit the investment group's criteria, but some of them might be deemed to be undervalued or whatever may be the case. So you can submit a deal, right? Because this is just real estate transactions. So we recently had a group vote to sell the underlying house. So this DAO is going to now sell the house, take all the profits, and then disband essentially, right? And then these people might move on to join another DAO or buy a new listing through Lofty. So there are houses for sale through Lofty as well. So the agent might then bring that deal to the investor group, and then they would be very happy with the deal. Like, wow, so and so keeps bringing us really good deals. And
Mm-hmm.
in reality, they just found another source. They don't have to do that much work because it's all there for you. So I definitely encourage agents and other professionals to really kind of expand your horizon, be aware of what's available out there, and realize that just like anything, this is just a tool. If you
Mm-hmm.
use it in the correct way, not only is it not going to hurt your business, it's going to supercharge it. But if you kind of bury your head in the sand, then yeah, over long terms, your competitors will start using it, things will evolve, and if you're just someone that refuses to adapt to the times, then yeah, your business might be at risk. You know, there's title companies that work with um, our sort of users on the platform all the time. And in the past, I can tell you there have been certain title companies that have refused digital signatures, and because of how distributed and virtual everything is on, like that's just a requirement. People can't physically show up, to a different state, and sign's not realistic, and the cost is exorbitant, and
Mm-hmm.
the title company just didn't want to do it, and there was no legal reasons. They just said our owner doesn't like digital signatures. Well, guess what?
Mm.
That title company was never used again by any of our users. They find and use digital ones that accept digital signatures, right? So it's really just, if you want your business to grow, I really highly advise people to be sort of more open-minded about new technology.
And to become adaptable. I like, yeah, definitely. I agree. I completely agree 100%. So as we continue to go through this, this platform, it's really, a great marketplace for a new investor, for a seasoned investor, an agent, just anyone in the real estate and property management industry. You can utilize this tech and this platform to your benefit, and you can find unique ways to service your client base. And so I definitely would recommend people to take a moment, go through the marketplace, check it out, click on the buttons here, click on the properties, look at the available tokens, see when new properties are listed on Lofty. So when are new properties listed on Lofty, and how does that process work?
Yeah, so there's no standardized time, right? Again, it's just a marketplace. So just whenever people come and decide they want to sell a property through Lofty, and then that's when new properties will launch. So it's similar to the MLS or Zillow, right? Like you can't really predict exactly when a new property listing will occur. It's just whenever people want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just keep an eye out on this, and we'll ping our existing users through email just to say, hey, a new property was listed. So just so you guys are aware that it exists.
I do like
And
that
then again,
feature.
it's up to you guys to sort of underwrite and do your own due diligence. Similarly, again, like everything mimics the real estate market out there. If you see a for sale sign on a house and there's a listing price, you don't just automatically assume that that is the best price and that is the fair price, right? It's
Yeah.
just that person wants to sell it at that price. You will then have to go do research and say, do I think this house is worth that price? And that's kind of where the research occurs. And so you have to do the same thing here. So there's all these houses for sale. We're not the ones determining what price they should be sold at. The seller is deciding that. It's their listing, it's their property. And so some might be asking too much. Some you might be lucky and they're asking too little because they don't really know their local markets that well. You might be getting a good deal. But regardless, not every property is equal. Don't assume that we've researched and Lofty is putting a stamp of approval that this is a good investment for you.
Mm-hmm.
Prices go up, prices go down, right? And so, we highly encourage people to really do their own research. Again, we just present you the factual information. You have to come to your own conclusions on what is viable for your own investment criteria.
Great, great, great. I like that. I like that. I do like the emails. I'm not gonna lie. I check my emails often, waiting. I have my little star notification when Lofty emails me. It's like, oh, new property available. I gotta go check it out. So it is kind of thrilling, for anyone, that wants to be interactive in this industry, in this space. So, Lofty has really opened my eyes to the possibility of what you can do when you're persistent. You consistently grow, you take your time, you focus, and you figure out where you want to do and where you want to do your investments. We're not professional financial advisors. We're not professional investors here. I'm an engineer, and Jerry here is CEO of Lofty, and we're just he's sharing his experience and his knowledge with everybody, and I'm really appreciative of your time here. So we have just like one or two more questions we're gonna do before we close out, but real quickly, so we can go ahead and cut the share. I want to get back to you. Can you give us just a quick introduction of who is Jerry? Who are you? Why did you decide to make a lofty? And how can someone connect with you if they wanted to learn more about lofty, things like that?
Definitely, yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Jerry. I'm one of the founders, and also currently the CEO at Lofty. So my background is pretty much all math and quantitative based. I wanted to be a trader on Wall Street originally. Then I did go work there briefly and realized it wasn't as cool as the movies made it out to be. There's a lot of bureaucracy, corporate, hierarchy, a lot of corporate politics and things like that. It wasn't really my environment. So I pivoted to focusing on tech and startups in general, to eventually starting my own. I've always wanted to build something myself, and we chose Lofty ultimately because it was a need that we felt like no one addressed. Basically, I built a product that I wanted because I was like, well, I want to do this thing. Why doesn't it exist? And
Mm-hmm.
I had a feeling that other people wanted to do the same thing. And the story is essentially, when I was younger, I was in college. Um, this was about maybe 2011, 2012, so a little while back. The real estate market was just starting to kind of rebound from the financial crisis, and I remember I went to USC, so I went to University in Los Angeles. I remember driving around in nice neighborhoods, and these massive mansions were like $2 million here in LA. And I remember being shocked. Like, it's a lot of money, but it's like, wow, this mansion should definitely be worth a lot more than $2 million. If I had the money, I would love to invest in this mansion because I have a feeling it's going to go up quite a bit. But obviously, as a college student, I did not have $2 million, so it's kind of a pipe dream. And I thought, maybe I will go invest in some REITs instead, right? Because it's supposed to look, REITs supposed to be a passive way for you index into the real estate market. So I
Mm-hmm.
did that. I bought a bunch of REITs. And the funny thing happened was, over the next 2 years, these homes in Beverly Hills essentially doubled, if not tripled, in value in just 2 to 3 years. And my REIT was down like 25%. That's the lesson it taught me, is like, oh, real estate is hyper local. So if you're just like, hey, I want to invest in real estate and buy a REIT, chances are that is not indexing to what you think it's indexing. It
Yeah.
owns like some warehouses, like storage facilities in like the middle of nowhere. Like and you have to really read all the prospectuses and everything put out there. The REIT might own 1,000 properties spread out all across, and the performance will be based on a weighted average of returns from all these properties that are in different sectors and different markets. What I wanted to do was just invest in Beverly Hills real estate. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, what I wanted, the impetus that drove me to make an investment decision. And of course, REITs and these other instruments weren't going to track that properly, right? And so the result of that was, I felt like, hey, I had some insight. I was pretty smart because I was living in the area. I was able to drive to these neighborhoods. It wasn't that far from me. And I saw real movement. I saw the listings, what was for sale and stuff. So I felt like I knew the local market pretty well. So I had this insight, but I couldn't take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
So at Lofty, that's ultimately the goal, which is that we hope we keep expanding so that eventually our marketplace is just like the real estate marketplace. Like, the default place to list houses for sale is through Lofty. And once that occurs, then the future me, someone like that who has the same opinions of, hey, I think that this neighborhood is going to take off, or I have some opinion about the real estate market, you can go and index money just into those specific houses in that market. So you're only exposed to that market that you have an opinion about,
Yeah.
and you don't need $2 million to get started. You could put in $50, $100, $1,000, whatever the amount of money that you feel comfortable risking, taking that bet. And so, had this product existed back when I was first interested in real estate as a college student, it wouldn't have been life changing money, but I would have definitely gotten an earlier start to my investments and my
Mm-hmm.
portfolio as well. So ultimately, what drove me and my co-founders to start Lofty was, hey, we all at some point had these opinions. When we drove by, when we went to a friend's house, we're like, oh, nice area. I bet like houses would do pretty well here if you bought one, right? We all kind of had that thought in the back of our minds. 99% of the time, we can't act on it just because we're locked out of the market, right?
Yeah.
even if someone who can afford it, it's not so easy to just YOLO like, hey, I'm just gonna go buy another house. You really have to be like the top of the 1% to really kind of have that kind of ability. So that's what we hope this platform will do, which is, opening up access so that if you have this strong opinion about something,
Mm-hmm.
you can go out and basically make a bet, on that, and that's what Lofty does for you essentially.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Jerry. I mean, this was an amazing conversation. I thought we went over a lot of really great questions. You gave me a lot of information. This is, I mean, honestly, I think we have something extremely valuable right here, what we just created. I just want to share with you quickly, I did go to Chat GPT and I wanted to ask it, give me some information about Lofty and Lofty AI. And so, just so you know, ChatGPT was saying, well, Lofty AI is a platform for buying and selling tokenized assets on the Algorand blockchain. It is an AI language model. I don't have opinions or personal experiences, but here's some information it wants to share. So, Algorand is a fast and secure blockchain that has been gaining traction in the financial industry with applications such as tokenizations, digital assets, management, and decentralized finance. We trust in this technology and investments ultimately depends on individual risk tolerance, the stability and security of the platform, and the reputation and track record of the project and its team. It's recommended to do your thorough research and consult with financial advisors before making any investment decisions. And
Definitely.
so, yeah, I think
Nailed it.
ChatGPT did pretty well
Yeah,
with its answer there. So,
definitely. And
thank.
one thing I will address is for folks that are kind of weary about the blockchain and crypto in general. Lofty, we're not a cryptocurrency company, right? There's no coins for Lofty. We've never issued tokens for the company itself. And if you don't understand what Algorand is, you don't need to worry about that. It's just a technology we use, kind of like a database, where some companies, you know, use Amazon's web hosting services. Some companies will use Microsoft's, and others will use Google's, and they're just technology. You as a user who go to that website don't really need to care, and we are not dependent on the price of Algo, the native tokens on Algorand doing well. So if you see prices going up or down, it's completely irrelevant to us and your real estate holdings. There's no correlation and influence there. And even if the chain itself in the future, were to shut down or anything, then we would just migrate the platform onto a different chain, similar to how a company can move their cloud services from Amazon over to Microsoft, right? So that's a question we get asked a lot, where people are worried or concerned that volatility in the price of algos or crypto market somehow affects their holdings here. It does not. You are buying real estate, So just want people to be aware of that.
Yeah, one of the things that I do, and this is just me, but when you are rewarded with your rent balance, okay, and you click withdraw, you have the option to do either a ACH transfer or PayPal, Algorand, USDC, or you can donate to charity. So you guys offer options, all right. So you don't have to use cryptocurrency if you hesitant about it. You can just use PayPal to distribute your withdrawals. If you want to reinvest it, that's up to you. If you want to take it out, it's that's all up to you, and and your decision and your financial risk. I happen to like to take out my rewards and get some Algorand with it because I myself like the technology, and I see some future appreciation potentially with it. But like Jerry was just saying there, that is not, they're not a company, but they're focused on using emerging and advanced technology to help with their data transactions and that and all of that information. So thank you again, Jerry. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day to educate the community, to help people understand more about Lofty and more about what you're building and your team is putting together. We're looking forward to what you guys have coming out in the future. I'm interested in continuing this relationship and maybe catching up with you in the future and just to see where this goes.
Definitely. Please do. We love it when people reach out. And thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, awesome. All right, I'm gonna end the recording right now.